Okay, we're all set.
Okay, everybody.
Oh, really?
So Douglas Finance Committee coming to order at 7:01 on Tuesday, February 25, 2025. Let's just go around the table and identify ourselves for the record.
Robert Leonardi.
Lynn Mazzoli.
Dick Vandenberg. Michael Hetta.
Carl Bogolinski.
Heather, are you there on Zoom?
Heather Moore, present via Zoom.
And then Ryan is not able to make it. I haven't heard from Howard, so
Oh, Howard's always late.
we have our quorum. So I emailed everybody, we're going to reverse the library and the schools. So school folk, you want to come to the chair? And if you guys would just identify yourselves for the record.
Hello, Bob Viera, Superintendent. Happy to be here tonight.
Courtney Higgins, Assistant Superintendent for Business Operations.
All right, so we received stuff from the school department, which I forwarded on to you. So before we have any questions, Paul or Courtney, you want to give us kind of an overview of where we are?
Sure, so in front of you, you have a PowerPoint, or you should have a PowerPoint that I'll just go over briefly with you. This is, the FY26 Superintendent's preliminary proposed budget. On our second slide or page is a copy of our mission statement, which I always like to include. Our third page is our strategic priority areas, basically what we base our decisions on. Our goal this year for FY26 was to try to provide a real needs budget for the Douglas Public Schools. Now what you're looking for is, I think, on page 5. FY26 budget drivers. These are our big buckets that drove our budget. As is always the case, 85% of our budget is salaries. This year is not any different. If you look at our salaries and wages, including honorarium and longevity, it is a 6.68% increase from 25 to 26. Other compensations, substitute teachers, overtime stipends was a 3.17% increase. Contractual services, not including special education, was a 5.9% increase. Textbooks, supplies, memberships, and miscellaneous, 25% increase. Custodial grounds, equipment, building maintenance, repairs, a 12% increase. Utilities, oddly enough, fuel, oil, electricity, telephone was only a 2.57% increase. Special education, medical and therapeutic services, a 3.26% increase. Really where we saw a large jump was in our transportation. Regular transportation went up 6.11%, and our special education in-district and out-of-district transportation went up 44.7% from 25 to 26. This was as a result of, after we had our public hearing in April, we had from about May, June, July of last year through about November of this year, a half a dozen students that for various reasons couldn't attend school within the Douglas Public Schools and had to be outplaced. Those weren't things we could anticipate. The majority of those were for mental health issues and beyond the scope of what we can provide for supports for students within the public schools. So not only were they outplaced, but we also needed to transport students to that placement. The big caveat is revenue budget drivers. So during the FY25 school year, special education tuition, transportation, and contractual services went up dramatically. Courtney has the exact amount, but I think it was about $635,000 that we did not anticipate as a result of these students having to be outplaced. In order to fund that, we had to basically drain our circuit breaker revolving account, projected to be near zero by the end of this fiscal year. We also had to use some of our operating and some other reserves to balance that. Therefore, the money that we had for circuit breaker to carry over from 25 to 26 is no longer there. So those were some of our big budget drivers for 26. On the next page is our preliminary budget summary as of 2/25. FY25 general fund appropriation net offsets was $15,343,852. Again, very grateful for the town for that 4% addition above appropriation. I started here, I believe it was FY '21, and we were at 1.5%. Then we went to 2, then 2.5, and 3, and this year 4. So I'm thankful for how the town has continued to support the public schools in that endeavor. So our total FY '26 appropriation is from the town is $15,957,606. Our proposed budget at this point is $19,628,853. We are using at this time from grants and revolving accounts $2,412,510. So our preliminary budget with general fund net offsets is $17,216,343 for a budget delta of $1.2 million. We still need to close that 12% delta between now and our public hearing. I believe it is April 2nd. So that's what we've been working on, and we'll continue to work on between now and the public hearing to close that. We'll do that with further line item reductions. We'll do that by looking at the budget. We'll continue to look at revolving funds and grants. And as the year gets closer to the end, we're more comfortable with using those offsets to offset the 12% delta.
And this isn't greatly different from where we are, in February each year. Because especially with regard to projecting the revenues through June 30th, the carryover balance, a lot can happen in a school district with repairs and things that just come up that you can't know in advance. So that affects the school choice balance, and also changes in the general fund. Just changes happen every day in the school district. So it's not that we feel that, we can't, we will get there.
Okay. Yeah, I think this is my fifth or sixth budget. We've been as low at this point as $300,000 and as high as 1.2, 1.3. So,
So Paul, the surprise about those out-of-district special education, is there any way at this time you can kind of guess what next year will be with that, or do they come up kind of a surprise in terms of kids that
so
need to
what we do with Courtney and the Office of Student Support Services is as the year progresses, we identify students that could potentially go out of district, and they inform us. And as the year goes on, we tend to budget for students that we know might go out of district.
Got it.
That's easy when you're looking at academic issues or some behaviors that you know that exist. It's a lot trickier with mental health issues that sometimes are underlying and don't manifest, and you can't see them manifesting themselves in school. And then as a result of a traumatic injury or an incident, they bubble up, and then we have to service those kids and work with students in another placement.
And that really has gone up a lot more. I hate to say it, as the last several years. It's something new. It's a new phenomenon, is really the way to put it.
You mean number of kids versus cost?
No, meaning just kids all of a sudden. It's not, you can't foresee it. That's what I mean, yeah.
And then Courtney, is the grant money pretty predictable year after year? Is that?
Yes and no. So say, for instance, a couple of years back, Title I, we were getting around $150,000, and all of a sudden, after our budget passed, we were told we were only going to get 58, I believe it was. You don't know. There's no rhyme or reason. The federal government just tells you that, and it just is what it is. So it can go up and down. Special ed, the IDEA grant is fairly stable. The 262 grant for early child special education, that's a really tiny one, 10, 11,000. That's been very stable. Now, keep in mind, we don't get anywhere near the grants we were getting with the ESSER funds and the COVID grants. It's dramatically decreased from what we were getting. But luckily, we did not spend it on things that would create a structural budget deficit. Some districts did, but we didn't do that, so that was a good thing. So those are those other ones are fairly stable at this time. Going forward.
What are the revolving funds?
meaning,
It's a use of grants and revolving funds.
so you have your budget document?
I've got a lot of stuff here. Is that gonna
Yeah,
come up?
this is the one here.
Answer it later then.
Yeah, oh no, we can answer it now, that's fine. So at the last page, the budget document's the same that I do every year, I haven't made many changes to it, but it delineates at the last page,
Page?
page 25, the very last page. Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
so that delineates, you see at the bottom, the 2,412,510. So you can see all the revolving funds there on the left-hand side. We have school choice, that's the largest one, circuit breaker. Preschool revolving, those are the tuition fees. Facilities rental, sometimes we are able to incorporate that in budget. Now, that probably will be an increase that I will be able to incorporate some here before we get to the public hearing. In middle school and high school athletic fees, and occasionally I do have some donations that come in. They come in, just some years we'll get some donations that I can also apply. And then more towards the right, we have the budgeted use of grants. And these are the grants that we get on a regular basis that I spoke of. And that's the SPED, we call it the 240 grant, because that's the grant fund. The 280,000. And then we have Title I. We're predicting this year 93,299. In the SPED early childhood education, 10,515. And again, with the federal grants going forward, we don't, yeah.
I was just gonna say, with the political
Yeah, I
climate
know,
right
yeah,
now,
we wanna-
is
yeah,
that
we wanna
more,
go there.
is that more at
We have-
risk?
Yep. I would say absolutely, I just,
Yeah,
No.
the word that we're getting from,
so it's just over $400,000 that we get, yeah.
and the word that we're getting from state legislators and from Superintendent's Association is, it's wait and see and don't panic. 1,000 things are getting thrown up against the wall.
Yeah.
We don't know how many will stick. So not to go at a level 20 with every time you hear something, and let's just wait to see what happens. But we've had the conversation, and obviously we need to prepare for it, but we don't know if something will happen or nothing will happen. There's just too much unrest and too much uncertainty, and we don't know what's going to stick and what's not going to stick. And even if something gets thrown out there, there's appeals and injunctions and things getting filed in court to stop things from going forward. So we're going to wait and see with that.
But 400,000, isn't 400,000 is a lot.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I mean, it's I know there's a wait and see, but it's hard to, yeah.
Okay, any other questions, anybody, for Paul or Courtney?
Of the salaries and wages increase, the 6.6% there, is any of that driven by new positions? Or I guess, no, that's just the number of the increase, right? So that it could be a mixture of COLAs and steps,
So
new
that-
That's what it
positions,
is.
lost positions, kind of the net of all of that?
Yeah, that's what it is. We don't have any new positions. We do not have any new positions in this budget.
No loss of positions?
So it's just
You
steps
don't
and
know
COLAs.
You don't know yet. You may have
Yeah,
to.
that,
with them.
right.
You know what, too, again, we're still working at it, but
Yeah.
we don't know if we'll have to eliminate positions with that 12% delta.
But as of right now, this number does not have any taken out, kind of as you've.
Correct.
you've built
That
it
is
so
correct,
far.
yeah.
Okay.
And again, we do have a lot of work to do, and I already have a list of things that I can, begin to go in and start, as far as some reductions to be made. All of the administrators went back and looked at their lines, and some things that we've talked about, made some decisions to remove from the budget, but certainly with regard to any positions, we would attempt to make them, be positions that weren't filled this year. We weren't even able to fill this year
And
to
in
the
case
extent possible.
anyone detected some hesitation in my tone, we're in the middle of contract negotiations with teachers at this point, so I'm just trying to choose my words wisely as we're trying to navigate those waters, yeah.
Yeah,
But that represents COLA, as you said, it represents steps, it represents lanes, it represents honorariums for staff, and it represents longevity, so.
and the only,
What is that?
longevity, same thing as longevity. They call it that honorarium in the teacher's contract, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is,
Go ahead, Rob.
with the changing dynamics of growth within the town, is there any capacity, should there be any additional influx of children due to new home purchases, things like that? Is there any capacity, or would that require additional staffing? Should there be a material increase in children into the town?
So it would depend on the grade level. So the high school, every year when we do school choice, we say we can accept about 50 students per grade level at the high school. So we can absolutely probably double our capacity at the high school. With the other grade levels, we try to be conservative with school choice. We have some grades where we have 18, 19 students average per grade level. We have others where we're at 26, 27. So if I could strategically pick the grade level where they can come in, we can handle an influx. And hopefully that there are some grade levels where we can't handle, and where we potentially would need if there were, what grade? 8th grade this year is a big bubble year. So, you know, we struggle as students were moving throughout. So if all of a sudden last year we had 20 kids move in and they all happened to be in grade 8, it would have required additional staff.
So in other words, put a sign up at the end, and both ends of Route 16 saying, these grades only, no.
I mean, I know that we've had a severe decline in our enrollment in the last like 20 years or so. Now, did you have to take down staff because of that decline?
So
Do
we
you have less people working now?
So
I think Bob probably isn't aware of the fact that we got about 600 students less than we had 20 years ago.
So in
I mean,
the
it's not just us.
Yeah.
Right, this is a Massachusetts.
It's a countrywide.
Yeah. Wow.
So in the 14-15 school year, our enrollment was at 1,500 students, and we went from 1,500 to 14 to 13 to 13 to 13 to 12. The COVID year, we dripped from 1,277 to 1162, and we've been hovering around 1150 for the past 4 years for enrollment. In terms of staffing, in that 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20 school year, we had total staff of about 121, 122, 123. Currently, we're at 116. So we've had about 6, 7, 8 reduction of staff. And then for paraprofessionals, we were in the an average of probably mid-50s. We're at 45 this year.
Right.
So we have reduced our staff as a result of the enrollment. Really, the tricky part's at the high school and with singleton courses. So for instance, if you think of science, in order to teach physics, you need a physics degree and a physics license. In order to teach chemistry, you need a chemistry license. In order to teach biology, you need a biology license and degree. You can only teach one class out of your certification. So we want to be able to offer physics. So our class sizes in physics are really small because we don't have 40 kids taking physics. So that's where we've had to keep additional staff at the high school level in order to be able to continue to offer classes for students.
I still have nightmares about physics.
I could have gone Spanish, French, and Latin.
I think what a lot of people are afraid they're going to have to build new schools because we're not going to have enough room in our schools if we get some more kids into the thing. And I think our schools are probably large enough and sufficient to take us out quite a few years now.
Depending on the building and the grade level, we should be all set.
Right.
You know, there's physical, the primary has space, but we do a lot of things. You know, we're fortunate that we're able to give, you know, if you think back to when your children were in elementary school and primary school, or you remember art in a cart, music on a cart, and the art teacher moving. All of our special area teachers have their own classrooms in the primary school. We also rent out space to Whiten Community Center for before and after school care. So that's space within the primary
Well,
school.
that's where you work that. Oh, that's good.
Yeah, we do. Our elementary school has available classrooms. Our middle school and high school also have available classrooms. So space really isn't the issue. It would be the teaching size.
Yeah.
So you really want to keep, especially in the elementary kids, you really want to keep that at about high teens, low 20s. Once you get 24, 25, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, it's a lot of bodies. So if you had the influx of new families, the space we would have, it would be the teaching staff we would have to increase.
Unfortunately, or fortunately, I say kind of unfortunately, we're not seeing new families because they cannot afford to buy the houses. New families with young kids, they can't. Most of the houses that are being sold now are to people who have absolutely no kids. It's their third house, and they can put down $600,000 or $700,000 on $1 million house.
And bid up,
Yeah,
and bid up.
yeah.
Paul, can you share with the group real briefly your little presentation to the select board about possible grant for the roof?
Sure. So the School Building Authority, a month ago, Courtney and I attended a webinar, and they are asking for schools to submit statements of interest for roof, door, window replacement projects. They've allocated $300 million for 2 years to refund, to help offset the cost of roofs, windows, and doors. So we went to the select board, I believe it was last Tuesday, and in order to even apply to consider being accepted, we need both approval of the Board of Selectmen and the school committee. School committee voted yesterday, select board voted last Tuesday, so we'll be submitting a statement of interest explaining how old the roof is, what we need, what we've done, and that has to be done by Friday, March 21st. They're then going to take it till December and then let schools know whether or not they were accepted into the project. Once you're accepted in, then you have to go out and find out what the cost is, have the Board of Selectmen vote to put a warrant article on, and then have the town either approve or not approve the project.
Yeah,
Which
tell me.
school?
Primary.
Primary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one with the 46, sorry, I should have said that.
Yeah.
So the primary school roof is 46 years old. I think the warranty on it
Well,
was,
they're 32 years old, that section.
That section.
Yeah. The building's 46 years
Yeah.
old, so the windows and, you know.
Yeah,
so it's windows, doors, and the roof.
okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I should have started with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, wait a minute, the high school.
So it was-
Yeah.
So we'll know, and again, the reimbursement rate can be
20 years.
10%, 20%, 30%, but at some point, we're going to have to replace the roof. So let's at least apply and hopefully not have to fund 100% of the project.
And then nothing's final until the town votes it. And of course, at that time, they will have all the information available for that vote, the reimbursement, the amount, everything. So it's a very beginning of the process.
Courtney, do you know off the top of your head the year of those buildings?
I know,
When each
well,
building came online?
not the year, I know the primary school is 46 years old.
Yeah.
Unbelievably, the renovation of the middle school and the new elementary school is now 11 years old.
Yeah.
And then the high school is over 20 years old.
And the middle school came online originally in 1988. and
It was
in the
88?
winter. They came back from winter break, Christmas break, and they moved into the new high school. What was then the high school?
Right,
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah.
so, right, the current high school is 20 years.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
The former new high school is 1988.
1988.
Now, what is the former new,
The middle-
then
what you
became
call-
the
it was
elementary,
middle school.
intermediate?
I was the high school.
Oh, my goodness.
This used,
Yeah,
this
wow,
building
I
used to
know.
be the high school.
Right.
Way back,
Way
yeah,
back, right.
yeah.
So
wow.
The former high school, current middle school came online in,
1988.
okay.
Yeah.
I thought it
January
was 79 or
1988.
something, okay.
And when did the new building, that's the,
It's 11 years old.
yeah.
But I can't even believe
What's that called?
The elementary school.
Elementary
Yeah, that's the
school.
elementary
Yeah.
school. So the primary school is the one that's 46 years.
Yes, yeah.
The elementary, I want to say that came online around, what did you say, 2008?
11 years.
It was like 8 or 2008,
Are
2010.
you talking about the elementary?
The elementary.
No, because I came here in 2012, and we were just starting that project.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right,
so
so
it's-
a few years ahead.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
2013, 2014.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then they did the renovation,
A little
yeah.
younger than I thought.
Yeah.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, I just want to make a quick comment. I did get the placement statement for the 5 years. I always appreciate that. Thank you guys very much. I went through it. Again, I just want to say for a record that, we talk here about the return on investment, and the return on investment to me out of the Douglas public school system continues to be extraordinarily strong. You guys are doing a great job, and, those are some of the results, right? Kids go across the board, the opportunities there are spectacular. So, commendation to the schools and the school system.
And it's good to have that
He's
information.
freshman, he's
What's
a
that?
sophomore,
It's good to have that
junior,
information.
senior.
Oh, it's.
This is
we've
over the
talked-
past
Yes.
right?
Yes,
So
every
send it
year.
out
Yep.
publicly, because people want to know. People picking a town to move into with little kids want to see that.
Yes.
They want to know what's available. And you've got an extraordinary list of universities that our kids have gone to in the
Yep.
last 5 years.
Yep, every year,
Extraordinary.
yep,
Extraordinary.
every year.
And what's great to see, and this list has changed a lot in the past half dozen years, is it's great to see kids getting out of New England.
Well,
And it's great to stay in New England.
Yeah.
It's
but the options,
That's correct.
right? The
But it's
options,
great to stay in New England.
well, the options
Yeah.
on that list, keep them in New England and get into the schools they want. If they want to go to New England regional schools and get them to San Diego, you've got Harvard in there, you've got Princeton in there again.
Yeah.
You've got Georgetown,
Yeah.
you've got across the board, you've got some great schools, and
Yeah.
Paul, to your point, diversity across the United States, right? If you want it, you can come to the Douglas Public School Systems and have an opportunity to get it.
New York University, Shanghai.
Right? Yes, right? Beyond the board, Lynn, right?
Yeah.
One kid, right?
Yeah.
NYU Shanghai,
Yeah, wow.
who knew?
Yeah,
Right? Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty great.
So Paul or Courtney, looking ahead 3 to 5 years, what are some looming things that we should start thinking about as finance committee?
Really is the big thing is the ability to be able to obtain and retain what we have. And the fear always
You mean
is
faculty-wise or
Faculty.
facility-wise?
faculty-wise, staff-wise, program-wise. It's been great to see the increase in the appropriation from the town, that 1.5, 2, 3, 4, and that has continued to grow. It's never going to get to 10%, but you see that growth. Our grants and our revolving fund has been relatively flat over the past few years. So at some point, your revenues go like this, but your expenses are going to continue to go up. It's just the way things work. And at some point, that delta gets too great. So that's always the concern with any public school or any town or any city, is that your revenues go like this, but your expenses continue to grow. And at some point, they outrun each other. So over the next 3 to 5 years, is how do you make sure that we can continue? And it's for everyone, it's not just for the school department, it's for every town department, police, fire, highway, library, municipal side, everything. How do you continue to offer what we've been able to offer to the community and to students, and not have to make cuts as that increases? So that's probably the biggest thing that we're looking at over the next 3 to 5 years. You have lots of ideas of things you'd love to do. In the budget this year, one thing we were able to add is, for our elementary students, we've seen a massive spike in volleyball, no pun intended for that one. Before I came out, I'm like, well, we've seen a massive spike in volleyball. So we added a volleyball program to our middle school for next year. So we want to continue to be able to do things like that. Project Lead the Way at the high school has been fabulous. We added it 3 years ago. We were the last school in the valley to add Project Lead the Way. Project Lead the Way it's basically an alternative path, something a little bit different than AP course, but it really focuses on engineering, computer science, and medical. It's 3 different pathways. We've really put a lot of time into that engineering pathway for it. So it's continued to build and grow Project Lead the Way. We got a grant to get it up and running, and then we've been able to incorporate that into operating. We have a couple of bubble classes going through the lower grades. Is how do you accommodate those lower classes? We're thrilled that for our young students in primary and elementary, we added a STEM teacher this year, science, technology, engineering, and math. It's funny, I walked the halls with Cindy and talked to them, and when you asked them what their favorite special was, it was always PE with Paul Smith. Right? And now he has some competition, it's split 50-50 with the STEM.
That's impressive.
Which is pretty impressive, right? And it's split both male and female for it. So Amanda Herman's done a great job having kids engaged in science and technology, experiments and projects. It's hands-on, it's cool, it's fun, it's different. So that's been a great addition. So it's how can we continue to maintain those programs?
Is there any thought of trying to do any sort of partnerships with some of the life sciences that are moving further west in the state to try to bring in some additional interest and excitement.
I know, so we have a partnership with Nichols College where our high school does things with them. We're always welcoming, and if you have examples of people that we can contact, happy to reach out to them. I know our guidance department, I sometimes get emails, hey, is anyone interested? We forward that to our guidance department. Sometimes they bring people in. Sometimes we can make the match work. Sometimes because of scheduling, you can't. We had an opportunity 4 years ago with Assumption College, where we were looking to do a partnership with them where students could take college-level courses and have it count both for high school and for college. Students would have to pay for the courses. I think it was about $1,000 for the course, which is a lot cheaper than what you're paying for. I mean, if you think $1,000, you think $10,000 a year, that's a lot cheaper than going to Assumption for a full year. The issue with high school schedules is the schedule rotates,
Right.
and you would have to go to Assumption to take the classes. So we'd have to freeze our entire schedule and have kids do half the day in Assumption, lose the transportation come. So it's not impossible, but it wouldn't work with our current schedule. But the short answer is yes, we'd love to do it if we have people who could partner with us.
Just wondering, in today's environment, right, a lot of schools, colleges are doing remote options these days, post-COVID world. Wondering if there might be more opportunities similar to that, with a little bit more flexibility in the transportation and the scheduling wise.
Correct, yeah, especially if...
Independent studies.
Correct.
So, a couple of concepts. First, Ross, your question about 3 to 5 years. And Matt, this might be for you too. Courtney, you mentioned the bubbling up of the special needs numbers.
Yeah,
And
the all stuff.
right? And we've gone through circuit breaker now. We've gone through your reserve. What does this school district, what does the town do when you hit a bubble that goes beyond your ability within the school district or school committee budget to accommodate? You know, if you go from 6 at 635 this year to 14, right at $1.5 million, right? All 3 to 5 years, a developing trend in student circumstances. So a developing trend that can't be dismissed or discounted.
So, Courtney says it 1,000 times, I'll say it again. She tries to be prudently conservative with our revolving accounts for this very reason, to in case there is an influx, we can at least accommodate for it for the fiscal year we're in. If it doubled or tripled, that would be a different conversation, and we would have to sit down with the town and see, what do we do if we went from maybe from 10 to 27 in the course of a year.
Yeah.
We could also file for extraordinary, potentially file for extraordinary.
Well, that's what I'm wondering.
So there was one year, years ago, that we did, actually Mike Kaczynski was here at the time, so it was years ago, and we did have a special ed education, because our budget was quite different back then, as you recall. So the town did appropriate $250,000 to the school budget.
Okay.
With the understanding that if we got extraordinary relief because of that, which we did, and we returned that.
That's
back
what
to
I'm
town.
looking for.
Yeah, that's what
Okay.
we did.
So there were a couple of
We had that
relief
one,
valves
we did have
there.
that one time when that happened,
Okay,
yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
that's, okay.
Of course, at that time, the town happened at the one, again, the town could have the same situation too, where,
Sure.
you know, right, you know.
But there's an ability to even apply to the state for extraordinary relief.
Yes, there is, and last year they had 2 relief programs.
Okay.
2 different criteria that you had to
Okay,
meet.
sure, okay.
But again, it all goes with, and of course, they have what's called a threshold.
Okay.
So for each student, there's a threshold that keeps
Sure,
increasing, you know, but we certainly do look at the
If you
special ed
get
department looks at
wildly
that and-
disproportionately
Yeah.
out of formula though,
Yeah.
there's a mechanism there to at least apply for relief.
Yes, absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
So that worked out good that one year. And again, to Paul's point, and I do always use that, I copped that phrase before I even came here about being prudently conservative. And what I mean by that is, I know I said this before, you're probably tired of hearing it, And I know sometimes it looks like we have these large balances, but the thing is, I have in my head, I know every day what happens in the school district. Like, with a 46-year-old building, now the high school 20 years old, the buildings are starting to be an issue as well. And I hate to say it, the way they make it. But you know what I mean? Things are different. Let's just put it this way. We all know it. You go out to buy a car, refrigerator, okay, whatever it is. It's not quite like it was 46 years ago with that building.
Sure.
Because we haven't had, knock on wood until recently. So I have to keep that in my mind. Okay, I've got to keep something there because if a lot of things, I have to be able to repair it right away. Because we have to have students come in the next day. So if it's something that affects keeping the schools open. So I have that in my mind. I know it's hard to articulate it, but just, I guess, just the knowledge of what goes on in the district and what the age of the buildings, what I've been seeing and things. So I kind of keep that in mind when I am doing that. And it is a struggle for me because when we get down to this, and I have to get down to the April public hearing and then, the May town meeting and then, we get into the new year and the kids all come back, all that. So I do a lot of looking at balances, and I keep doing it. I start in January particularly, projecting, and then I do it again and again and again and again. And meanwhile, repairs have had to be done and this and that. But the closer you get towards the end of the year, the less your financial liability exposure is.
Yep.
So that's why the further I can get, the lower my, which makes sense, of course, because we're almost at the end of the fiscal year. So the other thing is, kind of like I know the town has talked over the years, and I know I mentioned this before, is sometimes even the town budget is a 2-town meeting process. A lot of times you'll have the annual town meeting, and then you'll also have the fall town meeting. Kind of similar on the school side, we may remove things from the budget, but then I know that as of June 30th, the year is done.
Yeah.
There can't be any more repairs as of June 30th. On July 1st, right? Well, hopefully there won't be any.
Right.
But then if we close the books, reconcile with the town accountant, get everything reconciled, then I see where we actually stand. What we've left in the general fund, what's left in the, school choice and all that. And then at that time, what we've done many years, say we pulled out textbooks, then I let everyone know, okay, everything's looking better than we thought, now you can get the textbooks. And they're here for the start of school. It's the best I can do in the situation that I have. But I have to be conservative though too. I know sometimes people don't like being, but you really do have to. You can't look at just that number and say, wow, look at that number, because there's a lot that goes on that is in my mind with regard to that number. And again, I don't just think of the next ensuing year. I have to think prospectively beyond that as well. And that's why this was upsetting with the circuit breaker, because I kind of blew that right for water. But, but again, we have that school choice though.
Yep.
So, which is good.
All right, other questions for Paul or Courtney? All right, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Very much.
If questions come up, feel free to email us at any time.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Anytime you have any questions, don't hesitate to email.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you all.
April 8th is the,
Gene, is Justin out there?
Justin had a trustee meeting. He'll be over after the trustee meeting.
Okay, Matt? Mr. Wojcik, do you want to give us a little update from your perspective on where we stand while we're waiting for Mr. Snook?
You want me to vamp? Well,
Heather, you still with us? Okay, just checking. Go ahead, Matt.
I just don't have a lot of vampable material tonight. It's going to be a brief update. You heard what the schools are up against, and industry-wide, system-wide, we're coping with the massive increases in the cost of care and mental health care in particular. So it's not the same as out-of-district placement for special ed or anything like that. Not the same, and shouldn't be equated, but there is an underlying commonality. Some of the kids that generate a lot of cost in the system are also kids that we need to educate. And if I knew the answer to this, I probably wouldn't be sitting here. But what we are seeing is a lot of those youngsters need a lot of help. The cost of those claims is astronomical, and the cost of almost everything that comes through the system is really expensive. I think part of that underlying cause of that is, not to sound like a classical economist, but it's scarcity. So there are fewer and fewer people qualified to address the needs of these youngsters. More kids needing the system. So now, like if you want a neuropsych eval, you're looking at a year. So if you have an 8-year-old and you need a neuropsych eval, kid will be 9 by the time they get that help. And I'm not saying that because I don't know. I'm living that. So that's what we're seeing all the way across the system. And then we don't just put kids in a general pot anymore. There's a lot of emphasis in having kids with similar issues in similar settings. So we're not necessarily transporting a kid to the nearest out-of-district placement seat that's available. We're trying to get them to the right spot, which will be further away and more expensive. And on top of it all, one of the things those institutions need to do is not only need to find staff, but they have to be able to afford the insurance, workers' comp, and all the other insurances that go running that business. So, not to overstate the case, and I'll get back to the town budget with this segue, is on one level, I'm just as confident as I've ever been that the budget forecast model is generating good results and that we have options as we have come to the finish line here to present a balanced budget, and I'll get into why I'm going to budget to a surplus this year, even if it's not that much. There's a reason why I'm going to do that. So, not unnecessarily crying wolf about what goes on in terms of the town budget. I think we're in a good spot. I think our economic development pipeline is robust. But if anybody with economics training is anything less than terrified right now, they're not being honest with you. Because politics has become the driver of decisions that were formerly made by sound, rigorous economic analysis. And that's not going to play out well. This is not a place or a time to be experimenting or playing games, because most of us are not billionaires. If we have significant aberrations in our life, 15, 20% of the cost of the things that we buy, we have to make significant sacrifices in other parts of our lives. So, not exactly fully bought into the idea of sloganeering, because you can throw all the slogans you want. At the end of the day, the town of Douglas needs to buy a truck. We need to be able to get a truck that we can afford. It needs to arrive within the time frame when we need it to arrive, and then when we need to repair it, we need to be able to find and afford the parts. So it's a practical issue. It's not about politics. There's no Democrat or Republican way to fix the kingpin on a plaque. It's a physical reality. And so I'm sure along the way we could find ways to be very impactful and yet respectful of our own economy and using economic policy to send certain messages to certain countries. I'm not entirely sure increasing the cost of raw materials going back and forth to our largest trading partner, which is Canada, is even remotely intelligent. It's not. So I'm kind of bracing for the impact of that on the things that the town buys. So we have increasingly sophisticated and necessary durable equipment. We buy health insurance, so we're feeling all the claims activity occurring. So those things conspire along with just the ever-increasing demands of a personnel system. We really are 75 to 80% people. When people feel inflationary pressure, they come to the compensation process expecting some relief, some help from the job, especially if they're doing a good job and they're getting lots of accolades. Passing along 1% is not really going to fly. public service employees, get criticized when inflation is low because it kind of chuffs along at a rate that might be above the rate of consumer inflation. But it gets pulled back the other way in a high inflationary period. Justin's here in his trench coat, so apparently the TARDIS has arrived.
It's a duster.
Justin and I both
It's a
know
duster.
that. It's a duster. Okay, doctor. But when inflation is really high, we tend to be more conservative. So over time, we're not matching the volatility of the private sector, we're at steady Ed. And hopefully paying people enough to want to stay and work for the public. That's the tricky thing about trying to find that balance. So this year, you saw my summary, so I'll wrap up so that Justin can give you his talk. You saw my summary come out this week where I kind of told you where the moving parts are. I'm having lunch with our brokers on Thursday to review our health insurance options and what's going to drive the cost of that. And the answer is stop loss. Stop loss will be the largest significant decision we make. Our claims are running a little hot this year, not as bad as last year. We are going to have to build in a rate increase just to cover the cost of claims. So a cost of claims increase of roughly 6% plus some adjustments for stop loss. So I've baked in a 12. Maya, which is the largest group in Massachusetts, has a range of 9.5 to 19.5, with most communities obviously in the middle, right around 15, screaming and hollering. So if we get away with the 12, we might be all right.
Matt, are you gonna meet with that fellow who was on the remote with the select board, the guy that you know? Is he as one of the brokers?
No, that's property and casualty.
Oh,
So
that's
that's my
property.
next comment.
Okay.
We're going to move very quickly through the property and casualty placement process. We are going to qualify Maya as a finalist because they are the incumbent. They will be able to defend their program and their rate structure and their premium, which I budgeted this year at $609,000. The broker feels like he can come in well below that in a meaningful way. And so the test will be whether the quality of the coverage is competitive with what Maya provides. On the customer service side, it's hard to lose to Maya, really hard. It's January 24th, I got a letter to sign the contract for the year we're in. That's how far behind they are. They're 7 months behind. So we had a policy effective July 1st that we didn't sign the contract for until January 24th. That's absurd. It's not even close to being a professional standard. That should have been fully established before the fiscal year. So it's getting ridiculous. I mean, this has slipped more and more every year. It's truly, honestly getting absolutely ridiculous. They are still Johnny on the spot, so to speak, with claims. So we do have rather quick service when we file a claim. So our biggest bad news of the week was Norfolk Ag telling us that they have 8 applications. We currently only have a total of 8 kids in all 4 grades combined at the high school in Norfolk. So 2 are seniors and will graduate, so there'll be 6 remaining. If all 8 matriculate, there'll be 14, up from 8. So I am going to budget.
Trends for years after.
I'm going to budget the full ride. I don't know that all 8 will be admitted. I don't know that they will all matriculate once they're admitted, but we don't have the wherewithal as a town to raise the 30 grand per student if we miss it. So we're going to budget the top and then come back down. But that's a huge hit. So that's like from 200, almost 260,000 to 400, over 400, 409, I believe is the number I came up with. So that's why I need to do the property and casualty marketing, is to cover that. I want to get to a point where I have a little bit extra in the kitty, and I want to, we will show a balanced budget at town meeting. So whatever I've got that's in surplus, I'll put it in snow and ice, or I'll put it somewhere.
Right.
But the idea is the teacher's contract will drive costs not only on the school side of the budget, but on our side. I always want to remind people of how much we actually carry on the town side that is a school expense. So it doesn't even show up in the superintendent's budget or the school committee's budget. It's in our budget. And in this case, it's federal employment tax, the FICA taxes. So if we have a large increase in the teacher's contract and the FICA goes up, it will come through on the town side as part of the employee benefits line in the general budget. So I need to be sure that I have enough so that if their contract settlement costs us money in FICA, that we have it available. So in that case, I wouldn't be putting it in snow and ice, I'd put it somewhere else where I can get to it, in that same line item. But that's one of the things that I'm efforting against, because I think that's going to be a last minute thing, and it may even be after the close of the fiscal year. I don't know. I think the teachers want to settle before school lets out. I hope so. But these things have a tendency to come right up against those deadlines. I don't have much else for an update. The property casualty thing, if you're familiar with it, I have pages and pages and pages of questionnaires. I never thought I'd know this much about the town, but I did.
So, Matt, I have a question about just upcoming. I was watching the select board, their most recent meeting, and Matt Knight said there might be 11 warrant articles. Is that right? But is there any way we can get a sense of what the warrant articles will be before April 8th, so we can at least talk about them?
Well, you certainly should know by April 8th.
If April 8th, when we do it in the public, if we had a couple weeks to read them over at least, if we wouldn't hit it cold.
He's got a lot of house cleaning items, right? So he's got street acceptances on subdivisions that are closing out. And Sleepy Hollow is one of them. I think then there's another street just up the road from Sleepy Hollow, so William Drive, and I forget the other one. That's the Sleepy Hollow name of it. But, so that's two right there. He's got some zoning code petitions that he wants to put forward. I'm trying to remember what some of his other small items. Nothing jumped off his list to me as anything that is going to be wildly controversial, even if it is a little bit time pressure. Left to my better devices, I'm going to reduce that list of 11 to a more manageable number.
Okay, and then...
but street acceptances we more or less have to do, right?
Yeah. So
the owner wants to get this off their plate so that they can, whatever they have left in their bond can be returned to them. And that's only fair. Once they've completed all the work required to them in the subdivision plan, they should be getting whatever we're holding back from the bond. So,
and then will we have the highway barn on the May meeting, you think?
No.
Okay.
I can say that with certainty now. I believe the work is proceeding very well, but I'm just not comfortable rushing to May. I think we need a lot more conversation and a lot more looking at the picture and saying, is this what we really want to do? Can we move this? Can we do that? We're doing all the preliminary low-hanging fruit stuff, the triage. But once it gets to building facilities and capital committee, I think that's where a lot of questions can be asked and answered, so that by the time it gets to bond council as a serious financial proposal, it will have been fully vetted by the folks in town. Now, this would be done with an exclusion, right? So that requires a ballot vote. So if we did a special in September or as late as October, we do not have a scheduled election this year in November, but it's a time of year when people are used to going to vote on something. we would have to have that election, I believe it's 60 or 90 days. I always forget these deadlines. If it was in front of me, I could tell you. But we have to have an election fairly quickly after a special town meeting would approve it. If we have a special that is only on that topic, I think it'll be better for the overall dialogue. I think if we take a complex proposal and put it on the spring with the budget, capital budget, and all of these things that Matt Benoit needs voted, we're gonna have a really long meeting, and I don't like the dynamics of that. It feels like you're rushing a big project through. This is gonna be the largest public works project in town since the elementary school, probably.
So if we want to have it in the fall, then we've got to be aware of those hurdles time-wise to make sure all that stuff happens. Correct? And then ballpark guess on what inflation will do in 6 months to up the cost if we approve it in the fall and not in May, or what do you think the cost?
I think, asked me in 6 months, right? It's only been a month, so I'm not, or almost 2 now,
Okay.
so I'm not entirely sure what direction we're gonna head in as a country. Some of this stuff isn't made here. We'll have to get it here on a truck. So,
if we don't talk about the highway barn in May, what's our next time thing we need to pay attention to if we want to get it voted on in November, or a special meeting in October? Does something need to be done, say by August 1, or do you have a sense of that timetable, so we're just aware of it?
figure 3 months for bond counsel to, we have to get a cost estimate. I'm going to strongly recommend that we get an independent cost estimator that is not affiliated with the designer. So the cost estimator will take some time. Then the designer, by then the designer will be at what, close to 70% design. At that point, it's all in the schedule of bond counsel, financing, when you want to place the borrowing, what's their advice going to be. But that takes a few weeks to get that done. So that is what town meeting actually votes on. So that has to be completely done. That's why I'm thinking if town meeting is done in May, poor Gene's going to close books in June, we'll be completely running around for a couple of weeks with closing books and with transitioning the health insurance program. So if we're aiming for the end of September, beginning of October for a special town meeting, that's what I'm going to try to push it.
That's doable, you think?
It's got to be. I mean, I don't want to go any later than that because then we'll bump into the special in November, which I don't want to do because I think it's going to be a busy town meeting in November.
Well,
whatever I push Matt Benoit off on for May has to be done in November. We have to do street acceptances at annual by law.
Well, I think it would be great if at our March 25 meeting, which is our last meeting before the April 8 meeting, when we review the warrant articles in the public forum, if we could have a pretty good sense of what the warrant articles will be, so we can at least,
by then,
by March, so we can at least talk about them ourselves before the April 8th public hearing. So, other than Matt's warrant articles, are there any that you see coming from the Board of Selectmen that are of note, warrant-wise, other than the normal housekeeping kind of thing?
Yeah, so there's a little, I think I've said this, I give these little talks at so many committees I sometimes lose track. We have a little piece of land.
Oh, right, you guys talked about that at your meeting, yeah.
Yeah, so it's about 17 acres and it abuts the Cubes at Gilboa. It is a landlocked piece of industrial zone land that butts up against the border with the town of Uxbridge. A potential suitor for the warehouse is keen to buy that piece of land because they're looking at the parking capacity and their business operation, and they know they would need the buildable portion of that 17 acres, probably about 7 acres or so. They need that space, and they really are hot to try to buy it. So in order to facilitate the negotiation between the owner of the warehouse and the potential tenant, we've been exploring, how fast can we get an appraisal, what are the key issues in the appraisal, so we can start documenting things so the appraiser can do their work quickly. I'm pleased to say that the appraisal will not be theoretical in the sense that those 17 acres are benefited by an easement that runs across all the intervening property to northeast Maine. So it is technically not landlocked. It has access to a public way. And so you can value industrial land that way. We all know that the fact of the matter is industrial land is most valuable to the abutter or abutters, especially if it's landlocked or hard to get to, because it means a million, zillion good reasons for me to buy it if I have an existing factory and I'm trying to expand, or a warehouse I'm trying to expand, versus just a raw piece of land that somebody could or could not build a building on. It's just a different dynamic entirely. But it is impossible to get comps for landlocked industrial land bought by abutters.
Matt, you think for our March 25 meeting, there'd be a kind of an overview of that? Or will that language be ready for the warrant by then? Yeah.
So I don't sweat those because we've sold property before. It's, you're going to get a map and you're going to shall the town vote or will the town vote to authorize the select board to sell it according to chapter 30B, section 6.
Okay.
We'll put a floor.
We definitely would have the floor plans.
All right, any questions for Matt?
Yeah, I have two
Go ahead, Carol.
questions. On Norfolk Avenue, Aggie, do we provide transportation as well?
We pay for transportation.
Yeah, we pay for transportation,
Yeah, that's a wild card that we won't really know
right?
until they finish all their admission decisions and the
Yeah.
kids commit.
Right,
Then they'll know where they have to run their bus,
yeah,
whether they're going to add another bus.
okay,
It runs around 20 grand. I'm budgeting about 30
yeah,
to be on the safe side.
okay. Oh, so they provide, Norfolk Avenue sends the bus and you pay for it, okay.
Probably BBT.
What's that?
Doesn't BBT send their own bus for?
I think they do. I mean, I don't see that detail in their budget.
Yeah,
I'm presented with an invoice and a smile,
and then the
a
other,
glossy color.
the other question that I had was, you said, there's a lot that we take on the school side into the town's budget. Do we pay for the health insurance of the
Yes.
employees at school? So that's a big one that comes on the town budget.
Oh, yeah, that's by far the majority of our numbers.
Oh, yeah, because most people, okay.
All right, anybody else for Matt?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wojcik.
Thank you.
Justin, have the floor. Thanks for waiting, Justin.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for waiting for me. I was supposed to do this 2 weeks ago.
Does everybody have a copy of Justin's budget that we were going to look at 2 weeks ago?
You have an extra copy.
Well, here's a new one anyway, because the trustees of the library just met. Keep going. We'll pass them this way now.
Go that way.
Go that way with it.
Gary.
Yeah, we're good. So Justin, identify yourself for the record, would you please?
Justin Snook, Library Director at the Simon Fairfield Public Library.
All right, so give us the highlights, okay?
Okay, so I sent this out a couple weeks ago, but I'll go through it anyway, just for the sake of the meeting, if that's acceptable to everybody. I want to thank the committee for the $100,000 budget increase we got last year. That's been hugely successful, and I wanted to show how successful. I compiled the stats for the last 5 months. My board immediately asked me, why did you do 5 months instead of 6? And that's because July was spent, acquiring new staff, training new staff. We didn't actually get open until closer to August. So looking at those 5 months, our door count increased by $1,519 people, thanks to our budget increase. Our local physical loans increased by almost 2,500. Our local digital loans increased by 1,500. Our total physical loans, which is what we loan to, everybody in the network, increased by over 2,000. Total digital loans by over 4,000. We were able to hold 21 additional programs, which generated 78 additional attendees. And the brand new thing, which kind of evolved out of this, which has me super excited, is passive programming. This was an idea of one of our new hires, and it is take-home crafts, teas of the month, brain bundles, which people can download from the website, or you come get a physical copy. And that's we've distributed 1,163. So that's been a huge driver of just something new going on at the library that people are talking about, engaging with, and people seem to really love. I use the American Library Association's library value calculator to just calculate, the total, monetary value of the loans and the programs that we've held over the 5 months, and it's 97,734. And somebody actually has what that comes out to per pip on their sheet, because I passed out mine with my little cheat notes on it. $15 and something, I think, per cert is basically what it evens out to.
67.
So we accomplished that in 5 months. So I'm confident that by the end of the fiscal year, our return on investment for this budget increase will be, close to double.
Do you want to trade copies?
Oh no, I think that was literally my only note. We've made significant improvements in the building as well. We replaced our sink faucets because they were corroded, and we replaced the water valves and pipes that were rusty. We removed all the vestiges of the old heating system. So the pipes, the radiators, the baseboards are all gone, and we refinished the walls where they had been. And we refinished the walls throughout the library, scraped, patched, and repainted where necessary, because we had some water damage that impinged on them over the years. We installed electrical outlets in the archive, and by the end of the fiscal year, work actually started this morning on this. We'll have finished the ceiling of one of our storage rooms in the basement. We'll insulating it, drywalling it, and that will let us move our children's librarian into that room and open up a new room in the basement to public use, which has never been opened before. It'll probably take us another couple years of maintenance and repair budget to get there. But I'm hoping to have that an operational computer lab within the next couple of years, unless a different opportunity presents itself that seems better with, evolving and adapting society. So that's where we stand with what we've done. Are there questions about that before I move on to the FY26 budget request? Okay. So it's very kind of just steady she goes. The packet I sent out 2 weeks ago had a 2.8% increase, 2.84% increase in our bottom line. But I've been reading my emails over the last couple of weeks, and with the overall town budget bottom line, we went through and we found where we could give some back without pain, and so we've amended that. Right before this meeting, we had a trustee meeting where we decreased one of our line items by $4,091 just to help. So that takes us to a 1.9% budget increase. Our circulating materials is roughly 19% of our total budget. That's a rule we have to follow for state certifications. Custodial supplies just sees a $10 increase. Dues and memberships, I would like to maintain our archivists membership in the American Archivist Association, but drop everything else this year, because I kind of like doing it on an every other year basis. Sending the staff to MLA every year, not necessary. Every other year, every 3, sure. Electricity, when we increased our hours, we just didn't increase this line item enough, and we need to correct for that this year. So the $7,000 proposal is closer to where we're looking at actual usage ending up this year, because we're going over budget and we'll have to make up for it elsewhere. Licenses and subscriptions, I want to keep the same so we can continue providing a $600 a month budget for both ebooks and e-audiobooks on top of our regular expensive license. These generate lots of CERCs for our residents. They just don't count towards our circulating materials budget, so we have to budget that out separately because we don't share them. These are items we buy that are just for Douglas, and since we don't share them with any other towns, then they don't qualify towards our circulating materials expenditures. Does that make sense? The water bill, I've increased a little bit to reflect usage since we've increased our hours. Office supplies, I've put in a $50 increase. Other property-related expenses, I'm budgeting an additional $500 this year on top of just the monitoring and inspection fees. It seems, if the last 3 years are any indicator, we also need to budget to have to replace something because they keep finding things to replace. Other services is an event budget. This would be programs. Usually we have programs funded by the Friends, the Cultural Council, or other grants, but it is handy to have this on hand just in case other things don't pan out, in case a really good potential program or programmer presents an idea, we don't have time to figure out funding another way, we can guarantee we have something to fall back on. And if it doesn't get used, it provides bottom line security. And we're budgeting a little bit more this year to help out with the Smithsonian Museum on Main Street exhibit that's coming this fall. Do y'all know about that?
No.
Yeah.
What is that?
It is a grant that the Historical Society and the library have kind of worked on together. But during, I believe, October and November, there's going to be a museum exhibit in the gym here in the Municipal Center about like voices and votes, democracy in America, and how we've evolved as a voting society. We're going to have some programs at the library to dovetail with the exhibit. Our story walks will dovetail with it. The Historical Society is going to do stuff, and it's just going to be kind of a celebration of democracy and history. So we're working with the Historical Society to make that happen this fall. Other supplies are office supplies that are specific to library services that I put under a different line item. So like book jackets, sleeves, barcodes, spine labels, craft supplies, book repair supplies, like the finance office wouldn't need these kinds of things, but the library does by nature of the business that we do. So I try to separate those out from the generic ones. This is increasing a lot because we've got new staff with new ideas. They need different tools to do the things they're doing, and the passive programming has generated a lot of paper use. So we're going through a lot more paper. So this kind of gets that line item where it needs to be. Postage is for sending our naughty letters. Professional and technical consultants is our CW Mars membership. This pays for our interlibrary loan network, our automated delivery system, our IT network, and like all the software that runs the library. And if we were to like source this independently, we would pay more than this just for the software alone. But through CW Mars, we get all that, which is just great. And the reason for the bump in this year's budget is because our wireless access point will be due for replacement. So the following year, it should kind of go back down. Public safety supplies is just defibrillator pads. Repairs and maintenance is the line item I am decreasing because we increased it a lot with last year's budget bump. We accomplished a lot. Now some of that needs to kind of matriculate to other places to fill holes, and we still have more than we've ever had before, so we're happy with it, and we'll still be able to accomplish things at a faster rate. Replacement equipment is computers, gadgets, I'm budgeting this high because I don't know if I'm going to be able to upgrade all of our computers to Windows 11 capacity. I may have to replace more computers than I want to because their processors aren't going to be Windows 11 compatible. But if I'm able to solve that problem more cheaply, then that'll be good bottom line security. And then the last thing on the budget for operations is telephone, and I just want to start budgeting for some technician visits as well as the bill, because that's something we also keep seeing and I'd want to correct. Any questions before I move on to personnel?
I'm curious about the American Archivists Association. Is that just people that work for the library that can go in and see these old newspapers, or is that something that would be available to people who are using the library?
I think think if you know what you're after and you ask Rebecca for it, she can go in and find it for you. So it's not something we can share and put on the website, but it's something that gives her access to, you know, like all these newspaper articles if a patron asks her a question about them.
Okay.
Okay, everybody good, all right? Justin, carry on.
Okay. Salaries is just my salary. Full-time wages is our children's librarian, circulation librarian, and archivist. And part-time wages is where we just voted to decrease our budget request because I had built in some extra to cover Oktoberfest, Winter Stroll, picnic in the park, you know, lots of things that aren't part of our regularly scheduled hours that we end up doing. And then I tell staff, you know, shave that off somewhere else. I was hoping to avoid that this year and have some deep cleaning days, but this is just not the year to ask for that, so we're just striking it off. Which brings our total bottom line request to $412,109, which is 1.9% increase over last year. I'm optimistic that with it we can improve our level of service. We're still kind of growing into the budget increase we got last year. There's still a lot we can do to optimize, tweak before we ask for more. And that's where we are.
Well, thank you for this thorough report, Justin. And we have it organized, so very helpful. Any questions, anybody? Justin? Okay, I guess that's it. Well, thank you for.
Thank you very much.
And appreciate your time.
Pleasure as always. Thanks for rescheduling me. And good luck.
All right, appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Okay, everybody, so if you look at your agenda,
Thank you, Justin.
Jean, do we have any reserve fund transfers?
Yes,
Okay,
thank you. I don't know, thank you.
so let's look at the calendars. So, Matt, you don't have anything else for us, correct? Okay. So March 11 is BBT, correct, Jean?
And Board of Health.
Board of Health. What should we do on March 25? We were going to talk about the highway barn, but
I
that's
think
on hold.
that's a great time to talk about all the articles that Mappinoit may have.
If we have them.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's leave March 25 as just preview of talking about the warrant articles, okay? And then April 8, we'll do that in the public forum. And then, Jean, do we need to meet on April 22 at all?
I don't think so.
Because the warrant is closed.
The warrant's closed.
Yeah,
You'll have your pre-meeting the night of the town meeting.
okay. All right, so Board of Health and BBT on the 11th, March 25. We hope we help the articles more or less for the town meeting so we can get a sense of what they're all about. Then April 8, we'll go through the whole warrant. And then we won't meet again until May 5, right? Cinco de Mayo. And we have no meeting minutes to approve, because just don't. Anybody have anything else?
So there is just one.
Yeah, go ahead. Share that.
Before the meeting, I had mentioned to Dick that on Thursday, March 13th, BVT, their school committee is actually having a public hearing at the facility in Upton. So I was planning, if I could, hopefully I can navigate my work schedule so that I'm interested in attending the meeting just to at least observe and hear what they say at their public meeting. But if anybody else is interested, it's 2 days after they're going to be here talking to us. So I was just curious to hear what is, what the school committee.
What's the date again?
Thursday, the 13th of March.
Do you know the time or anything on that?
I believe it was, bear with me for 1 quick second. If I can find it quickly. What it was, either 5 or 5:30. So it's on their website, which, see how quickly I can get there. But that was just something I wanted to share with the committee.
So you're going to plan on going then, Rob?
I am.
Go with our blessing. Yeah, thank you for doing that. And Carol, maybe you will go too or not?
I might.
Okay.
Depends, I got, like, I'm on 4 committees now, so who knows if I have meetings.
Yeah, my internet internet's just not,
Okay.
not connecting, but,
It's 6 o'clock.
I'm sorry?
It's 6 o'clock is when the BBT school committee meetings are held, at 6 o'clock.
Oh, thank you.
All right, thank you, Heather. All right,
If more than 2 people are going, right, it's a quorum, right?
Is it 2 or 5?
I think it's 5, isn't it?
It's at 5? Okay.
Okay. And so just for the record, Howard is here, but Sandy wasn't able to make it, Sandy Packer, so we'll just make a note of that. All right, anybody else have anything? All right, we need a motion to adjourn, and because we have a member on Zoom, we have to do it serially. So somebody make that motion.
So moved.
So moved.
So Mike made the motion to adjourn, so Heather seconds, right?
Second.
Heather? All right, so we got to vote by saying our names, so Rob, you start.
Rob Leonardi, aye.
Howard D'Amico, aye.
Lynn Mazzulli, aye.
Dick Vandenberg, aye.
Michael Lenhart,
Carol Gogolinsky, aye.
Heather Moore, 9.
Okay, we adjourn at 8:21.